Welcome in. Back with another episode of West Coast Uncensored. Please give. You can see my name and Cash App to the work, as I may have to do some work with this computer. Definitely to get to upgrade it a little bit to handle, find out what's wrong with the external microphone, as it didn't work when I tried to record the other day. But anyways, back at it. We just had a video. We were talking the other day about the reflective mirror, how important the mirror is in the reality we have accepted, or we live in. We know we talked about some of the concepts. I've been doing some homework with some scholars, listening to them discuss this, and come to find out, not many people trusted certain people. And the whole term that we see is that the since the 90s about the holographic reality was known long ago, and some people who kind of bring it up since 90 talk want to call it quantum field had surpassed from the physical and realized the spiritual field was real, but they chose the word quantum instead of that. But this goes back to many people in the early 1900s that found out about this and didn't trust the scientists who were putting it out and said, yeah, they're running game and they're not being true, which we know many have sold out to the almighty dollar to get paid, so they'll not tell you the truth necessarily, but just interesting things we found out, because the reality truth can be used, and I've said this many times, I've used this. People say occultic can think bad, but it's really not. Do you use it? It can be destructive if you use it that way, or it can be life-giving, harmonious life if used the other way. What do you use it for in your dynamite package? To bring life, or to destroy, divide, conquer, and continue in the game of give and thieve and take and keep people squandered down in a lower thinking? Or are you seeing everybody united as one? What do you do with it? But anyways, I got the interesting episode today. I had mentioned before, did this kind of on a lower level, but I'm going to connect this in a very different level, a modern day level. So we're going to talk about 3 different types of people mentioned in Gnosticism. Why I'm going to use Gnosticism, I was going through some Gnostic scholars, really listening to them today, talking about how Gnosticism really comes from ancient Egypt. It's the ancient Egypt spiritual teaching connected in continuum. Yeah, and this part I did not know before this. So forgive me, because knowledge is always capable to grow, learn, and when I have chances to grab it, I'm like, oh wow, that's pretty neat. So actually, it was something that was out, something that was observed, and that's why it's really not based in a Gnosticism has not based in a culture. I teach and I brought up Gnosticism in a Christian, but what about Sufi? Egypt or Kemet, because that's where it originates from, and other metaphysical teachings that had nothing to do with your culture and land, but you could use it and implement it in your culture. And then when I started seeing this, I realized that this was taken and taught in Egypt to them who had come later, and the Greeks and many others who wanted spiritual knowledge. See, there's a big difference of what the Greeks did, but not all, because even the Sufi Arabics are metaphysics. That's why when you get into Sufism, and it's aligned with Muslimism, Sufism is not Muslimism, has Gnosticism, and mystic Christianity is not those from Rome. And when I say those from Rome, when you really start looking at it, they brought this out, how the scholars and the forefathers from Rome were fighting Gnosticism so hard, but had to tell you the truth about it, which when you hear the truth and you got ear to hear, you go, that makes sense more than what you were doing. So actually the very ones I know that my enemy that are trying to deceive for their political value and gain and power actually fumbled, and they were showing how they fumbled the truth. If you were listening, they tried so hard to destroy it that they had to tell you the truth about it. Very interesting, very good stuff. I'm not even finished watching. Got another hour and a half. I will jump on that later because that was some good stuff. But furthermore, I got a very short video, 20 minutes, so it's not short, and I got something and some more just to kind of go over this again, and we won't go over it more before we shoot the video. So let's share. Let's get this party started. Very good. Let's get this party started. Let's go here. So, what I wanted to go over was Gnosticism classifies people in 3 different types of based of their spiritual awareness or their potential of who they were. This video is going to align this in modern day thinking in a way that really is going to drive it home. It hit me home the other day. And of course, the pneumatic spiritual ones who use gnosis, who know and have knowledge and are aware. This has nothing to do with any culture. This was Gnosticism, or the gnosis was in all cultures. That's why when you really look at it and go, it's not aligned with this, it's not aligned with that, it was everywhere because it's everywhere. Meaning this term of gnosis, the pneumatics, was something that everybody knew when they had the experience. Hinduism, Buddhism. Gnosticism comes from the continuum of the Egyptian spiritual system. The psychics, soulful, can be saved partially through faith and works, but are usually stuck and can be in religion and stuff, and religion kind of back and forth. I'm going to show how there's an aspect of these 3 too, which will be mentioned in the video, how this works. And the Hylics are material trapped in matter, cannot achieve gnosis, and really are doomed. I would say more, this is what they are. They are the machine that builds the machine. This hierarchy reflects the level of divine spark within each person. The pneumatics having full sparks, psychics having partial sparks, and almost the Hylics having none. They were just kind of the pneumatic spiritual ones, the highest order, fully imbued with spiritual pneuma. They possess the divine spark and can attain true gnosis knowledge, escape the material, and achieve full salvation. The psychic, soulful ones, the middle class, possessing a full psyche, but not the full divine spirit. They can be saved through their faith, good works, but their salvation is incomplete, falling short of the pneumatics level. And the Hylics, they had just lacked the divine spark, pretty much physical beings, pretty much the machine that possibly we're going to see even in a deeper way, build the machine, and even how this works in the machine. The division explains different paths of salvation, gnosis being the key of the pneumatics. Psychics have a chance for lesser salvation. Hylics are extensively lost to the material world. We're going to go out of there. Just want to just go back over there before I share, right? Before I share this video, so I'm going to share this video. But I'm going to align this. It's going to be mentioned in the video because this was given in a very functioning way of the system. This video is going to go how the system's aligned and how the system's a machine and how these Hylics are actually the machine, meaning the preparers of the machine, and they're kind of stuck in that physical realm. They prepare the machine, they keep the machine going, and not necessarily if they're going to murder you, kill you, hate you. They may just pay their bills, may even have some families, do their job, get their money, buy houses, like good pickup trucks, right? But don't go past that. Not necessarily they're going to hate you or kill you or murder you, see you as your enemy. This will be reinstated again. But these 3 levels blew my mind when I watched this level taken to this, this next level. This aligns with my last video if you take it and absorb it with this where we live and how we are here and what this place really kind of is, or not kind of is, and we start putting these things together. Who are you, right? So let's share and let's get started. Let's go full screen. Let's go, and I will click out of this. So let's get ready.
On Riverside is a no-brainer, and I want to show you why. Your podcast transcript is here, and you just have to edit the text, and that
you directly, because you need to feel this. The world you think is unified is actually divided at the core. What really are and why they were made, you start to see exactly why this material was banned. Because it doesn't just challenge religion. It detonates the entire idea of a single human race. It doesn't ask you to rethink morality or ethics. It demands you look at the architecture of creation and realize someone's been lying about the blueprint. Let me break it down with the direct energy of a conversation, not the soft tone of a lecture. Imagine someone walks into your room right now, grabs the nearest table, flips it over, and says, "Everything you think you know about what you are is wrong." That's exactly what these texts do. They don't build a bridge from what you learned in Sunday school. They burn the bridge, salt the ground, and hand you a map of a world built on layers of deception. They don't treat humanity as a single divine project. They treat it like a cosmic experiment with different outputs built for different reasons. The first shock the texts hit you with is this: not all humans contain the same essence. Not all humans carry the same internal fire. Some people were manufactured strictly from the material substance of the false creator, the architect of the physical world. Some were built as hybrids, caught between forces they don't understand. And some were planted into the world like infiltrators, carrying a spark that doesn't belong here at all. And this wasn't a metaphor. In the Forbidden Writings, these three types are literal structural categories of human existence. Let me talk to you directly, because you need to feel this. The world you think is unified is actually divided at the core. This isn't about class, race, nationality.
Get this off real quick.
Or upbringing. This is deeper than bloodline. This is existential engineering. And the banned texts weren't shy. They described how each type was formed, who formed them, and why the system has to keep you blind to it. You've been told that a single creator made all humans in one perfect act. These texts say that's fiction. They say the world was formed by a lower being, a craftsman of matter, who didn't just create a universe, but created different types of humans to populate it. Not as equals. Not as brothers. But as components of a system designed to feed, distract, and contain. From the very first sentences, these texts attack the idea that you and everyone around you are built the same way. They call the lowest type the ones born from matter, not as an insult, but as a statement of origin. Crafted from the dust of the world, shaped by the will of an inferior creator, they are described as beings whose consciousness is locked into the weight of the physical. Their existence is tied to repetition, instinct, imitation. They don't question the world because they are part of the world's machinery. The texts paint them as functional components of a cosmic device, not as spiritual beings with hidden depth. Then they describe the second type, and this is where things get intense. These humans are made from a dual substance, part matter, part something higher. They can sense the cracks in the illusion. They can feel the tension between what the world wants them to believe and what their inner awareness is screaming at them. They're not blind, but they're not free either. They're the ones who hesitate, question, doubt. They are the battlefield where opposing forces collide, the pull of the world and the whisper of something beyond it. Their entire existence is a tug-of-war between the architecture of the lower creator and the remnants of a higher truth buried within them. And then the third type, the type that made ancient authorities panic. These are the ones the texts describe as carrying a flame not from this world at all. A spark from the realm outside the physical, placed inside them like a smuggled treasure. They don't belong here. They never did. Everything about them breaks the boundaries of the world they were born into. They see through illusions faster. They feel disconnected from everything normal people cling to. They don't adapt to the system, they disrupt it by existing. These humans aren't defined by faith or belief. Their essence remembers what the world has forgotten. And because they aren't built solely from the material of the lower creator, the entire structure of reality has trouble controlling them. Let me be clear with you, this division wasn't symbolic. The banned texts talk about it as literal design. They didn't soften it to spare feelings. They stated that some humans were built to follow the world, Some were built to struggle within it, and some were built to break it. The idea was so explosive that institutional religion had no choice but to erase it. If people knew they were made from different cosmic substances, the entire power structure would collapse. You can't control people who understand that their consciousness doesn't belong to the world they're trapped in. You can't guide them with fear if they realize their identity predates the universe they're standing on. Now imagine being one of the authorities back then. Imagine watching this knowledge spread. Imagine people discovering that not everyone around them is operating under the same design, that some individuals hold an inner resonance capable of bypassing the control of the world itself. That's not just dangerous. That's fatal to any organized spiritual hierarchy. So the texts were burned. The teachers who carried them were hunted. The ideas were smeared as heresy, insanity, devil worship, anything to scare people away. But here's where the banned material hits you even harder. It doesn't blame the lower creator for making different types of humans. It exposes it. It says this differentiation was intentional, calculated, and built into the architecture of existence. The lowest type keeps the world running. The middle type keeps the world unstable. And the highest type threatens the world's entire foundation. The structure depends on ignorance. The moment the highest type realizes what they are, the game changes. And this is where the narrative goes from shocking to surgical. These texts don't present the world as a moral stage of good and evil. They present it as a controlled environment built with layers of consciousness, each layer inhabited by a different type of human. They say the world wasn't made to nurture the highest type, it was built to restrain them. The physical body was a cage. The mind was a decoy. Emotions were the trap that kept the middle type spinning, unable to decide which force to follow. And the lowest type simply kept the machinery humming, never questioning why it existed in the first place. You want the truth about the first type?
Yes.
We're talking about the Hylic, human beings engineered entirely from the raw material of the lower realm. Not symbolically. Not metaphorically. Structurally. This is the category the system never wanted you to understand, because once you see how they function, you start seeing why the world is built the way it is. And once that clicks, the whole design stops looking mysterious and starts looking intentional. Let me talk to you straight. The Hylic are not less than. They're not villains.
That's the interesting
They're
part.
not broken. They're simply constructed for a specific purpose, to stabilize the physical order. That's the part nobody wants to say out loud, so I'll say it for you. Their consciousness is tuned to the frequency of the material world. Their instincts, impulses, drives, those aren't weaknesses. Those are their operating system. They move with the world because they are aligned with the world. They absorb its logic, follow its momentum, and reinforce its architecture by living it without friction. The banned manuscripts describe this type of human like a living extension of the physical order. They function through repetition, habit, and sensory response. Not because they lack depth, but because they are synchronized with the environment they're built from. Their focus is the immediate, the tangible, the concrete.
That's heavy.
They are oriented toward the tasks that make the system run.
Totally
Work,
makes sense.
structure, routine, cycles. Their awareness rarely stretches beyond the parameters of what they can touch, measure, or confirm. Pay attention, because this is where it becomes fascinating. The Hylic operate with high efficiency inside a predictable world. They maintain patterns. They uphold the routines that keep the physical realm consistent and recognizable. If the world were a giant organism, they'd be the stable cells holding the body together. They don't sabotage, they don't disrupt, they don't dismantle. They maintain. And because of that, they become the backbone of the system. Now, here's where the banned texts get ruthless. They say the Hylic are deeply integrated into the sensory currents of existence. Pleasure, pain, fear, desire, survival, these forces shape their choices directly. Their consciousness moves in a straight line, stimulus, response, continuation. They don't wrestle with metaphysical tension. They don't step outside the frame to question the frame.
Right.
They inhabit the frame fully, almost
Understanding,
seamlessly.
never over.
And that seamlessness is exactly what allows the world's lower architecture to remain intact. Let me make this sharper for you. Imagine someone wired so closely to physical life that their emotional and mental processes sync naturally with whatever the world demands from them. That's not manipulation, that's compatibility. They're built to engage, to perform, to respond. And because their consciousness moves along the grooves of the world's design, the system uses them not as puppets, but as natural participants. They play the game without even realizing there's a game.
Right.
And before you think this is insulting, understand the level of power that comes from this alignment. These individuals can commit fully to the physical realm in ways the other types never can. They can anchor entire societies. They can execute massive tasks with consistency. They can live inside structure without tearing it apart. They aren't weighed down by metaphysical conflict. They don't waste energy battling inner paradox. They move forward with the momentum of existence itself. The band writings describe their consciousness as dense, grounded, and durable. Not dull, durable. Like a stone foundation. They absorb shocks. They endure cycles. They handle demands without fracturing. They have a resilience that higher structured consciousness often lacks. And because of that resilience, they bear the weight of the world's continuity. Let's break this down even sharper. This type of human takes the events of life at face value. Loss is loss. Gain is gain. Emotion hits, they feel it. Conflict happens, they navigate it. They don't get trapped analyzing the meaning behind every moment. That directness makes them decisive. They are not paralyzed by hesitation or reflection. They can commit to tasks, relationships, routines, responsibilities. They function at the base layer of human society, but base doesn't mean inferior. It means foundational. Now let's get into the raw psychological mechanics, because this is the part that makes people uncomfortable. Their attention rarely gravitates toward abstraction. Their energy stays anchored in the immediate, body, environment, rhythm. They don't spiral into existential thought loops. Their identity forms around tangible roles: provider, worker, builder, follower of order. And that identity is reinforced by the lower architecture of the world itself. The system doesn't need to manipulate them, they simply resonate with the frequency it emits.
Wow.
Their emotional range is real, but it's tied strongly to concrete triggers. They process emotion through action. Something hurts, they react. Something delights, they pursue. Something threatens, they defend. They live in the now with intensity. And because their emotional world is not abstracted, it's predictable. That predictability is not stupidity, it's stability. They thrive in clarity and struggle in ambiguity. They excel in routine and struggle in transcendence. They act with instinctive direction and struggle with conceptual introspection. The texts describe them as oriented outward rather than inward. They engage the world through participation, not observation. They move with the flow of events rather than stepping outside to analyze the flow. And because they don't detach from the physical, they experience tasks, relationships, pleasures, and responsibilities with a grounded intensity that the other types almost envy. They seek belonging, structure, repetition, cycles. They desire security, not liberation. Their consciousness isn't restless. It's anchored. And here's a detail the banned manuscripts emphasize with almost brutal clarity: the Hylic do not generate disruption. They don't challenge the architecture of existence. They don't question the nature of reality. They don't destabilize the lower realms because they're built from the same essence those realms are built from.
Yeah, they're part of it.
Their consciousness is compatible with the environment, and that compatibility makes them the perfect maintainers of the physical order.
我只係想同佢講，
It makes
叫佢
them
關心我
stable
多
in the
啲，俾
physical
多
reality.
啲時間翻屋企
They're not
睇下
evil.
啲細。
Just
Think of how a
don't
river
think
moves.
past their frequency.
Constant, predictable, strong. That's how their consciousness flows. They follow the trajectory the world provides. They don't carve new channels, they fill the ones that already exist. Their minds align with what is present, not with what is possible. That's why the band teachings describe them as synchronized with the demiurgic system, not subjugated, but synchronized. They are the human expression of the material realm's intention. You want the psychic type? Good. Because this is where the band material stops being descriptive and becomes dangerous. This is the category the ancient authorities feared the most, not because these people were rebels, but because they were unpredictable. They sit between two realms, and that middle position makes them volatile, unstable, and capable of shifting the balance of the entire human design. And I'm going to break it down for you without sugarcoating, without circling around the point, and without repeating anything you've already heard.
Wow.
Let's go straight into the core of what the psychic really is. The psychic human is constructed from dual architecture. Their consciousness is split between a lower structure that anchors them to the world and a higher resonance that pulls them toward something they can't articulate. They're not torn by morality, they're torn by composition. One part of them recognizes the density of existence, while
realms,
another part recognizes the tremor of something beyond the physical.
Where the other one
And those two forces
anchored
never
in
stop
the
pulling at each
frequency,
other.
stable.
You can feel it in the way they think, the way they react, the way they navigate
you?
their lives.
Which one are you?
They live in a constant internal negotiation. Here's the truth the band texts describe with brutal precision: the psychic type is a battleground. Not metaphorically, a literal inner terrain where two opposing architectures collide. They walk around with the sensitivity of someone who sees cracks in the world but can't step through them. They feel the tension of a system they don't fully belong to, yet they keep trying to belong because part of them is rooted here.
Yes.
Their emotions are not simple feedback loops. Their emotions are collisions, moments where their two natures smash into each other and generate intensity. They are the most reactive type, not because they lack control, but because they're built from competing signals. The lower structure moves in one direction. The higher resonance pulls in another. That pulling creates conflict, insight, confusion, clarity, collapse, breakthrough. You talk to a psychic and you feel like you're talking to two people at once, one grounded, one searching, one forming attachments, one trying to escape them, one anchored in the tangible, one driven by an instinct they don't know how to name. The texts describe the psychic as the type whose awareness oscillates. They shift between being immersed in the world and being detached from it. They can be fully engaged in the immediacy of life one moment, then suddenly struck by a deep, disruptive intuition the next. They experience flashes, moments where something inside them rises with authority, then withdraws just as quickly, leaving them questioning what they felt. They're not imagining things. They're responding to two internal frequencies at once.
That's heavy.
Let me give you the sharp version of this. If the hylic type is consistent, the psychic type is unstable by design. Not in a negative sense. In an active sense. They respond to two energies simultaneously. Their mind is constantly decoding signals the lowest type can't sense and the highest type already understands. They're stuck in the middle zone where awareness is emerging but not integrated. And that emerging awareness sends ripples through their entire identity. The psychic has an emotional depth that isn't grounded in instinct or memory. It comes from the collision of their dual structure. Their feelings don't simply rise, they ignite. They don't simply react, they absorb. Their emotional world is thick, layered, and saturated with meaning, even if that meaning fractures as soon as they try to grasp it. They feel intensely because their consciousness stretches across two planes at once, and emotional experience becomes the bridge between them. The ancient texts go even deeper. They say the psychic is the one most influenced by forces beyond their own making. Not because they're weak, but because they are permeable. They absorb impressions from the world around them and the world within them. They're sensitive to atmosphere, tone, intention, tension. They pick up on shifts that others miss. They feel when something is off long before it becomes visible. But they can't always interpret what they sense. Their awareness moves ahead of their understanding, creating a constant gap between perception and clarity. And that gap drives their internal storms. They experience restlessness, longing, dissatisfaction, inspiration, doubt. They seek meaning not as a luxury but as a necessity. Their consciousness demands interpretation. They question things not because they want to rebel, but because their internal mechanism requires alignment. When things don't align, they feel it physically, mentally, emotionally. Their inner world refuses to settle in false structures. But because they don't fully grasp the higher resonance within them, they don't know what alignment should look like. This is why the psychic type becomes the most complicated to control and the easiest to influence. Their dual nature makes them pulled by both sides. The lower force tries to tune them to the density of the world. The higher resonance tries to wake them into awareness. They hear both signals. They feel both directions. And because their consciousness can lean either way, they become the pivot point in the entire design of humanity. The texts describe something stunning about this type. They can amplify whatever force they align with. If they follow the lower structure, they reinforce the physical system. If they lean into the higher resonance, they destabilize it. Their consciousness acts like a magnifier.
Yeah.
Whatever energy they choose becomes powerful. They're the only type capable of switching lanes. And that switching ability is exactly why the system is terrified of them. The psychic is the only human category that is neither fixed nor predetermined. Their trajectory is flexible. Their identity is fluid. Their awareness is malleable. They contain both potential and limitation in equal measure. They're the edge case of existence, the ones who can lean fully into the world or fully out of it depending on their internal axis. That axis is unstable. And that instability creates unpredictability. No one can fully anticipate the direction a psychic consciousness will take because they themselves don't know until the shift happens. One moment they operate like a rooted being, fully immersed in physical logic. The next moment, something cracks open inside them, and they operate with insight, intuition, or awareness that seems to come from somewhere beyond the physical. They live in flux. They breathe in contradictions. They embody conflict. And that conflict gives them a depth no other type possesses. Let's push further. Their internal dialogue isn't simple. It's layered. They're constantly interpreting, reassessing, reframing, re-evaluating. Their thoughts don't move linearly. They spiral, twist, expand, collapse, rise again. Their mind has multiple centers of gravity. Sometimes they speak with clarity, sometimes with confusion, sometimes with intensity. Their consciousness is like a storm that builds, breaks, and rebuilds itself again. That storm is not chaos. It's movement. The psychic type is defined by movement, inner, outer, psychological, energetic. Movement towards something they can feel but cannot fully understand. They are drawn by an inner pull that doesn't explain itself. They try to satisfy it with emotion, relationship, achievement, experience, but nothing sticks. Nothing fully resolves. The pull continues. The search continues. They are restless because their structure is incomplete. You want the pneumatic type? Good, because this is the point where the forbidden material stops observing humanity and starts exposing the one category that the system could never afford to let ordinary people understand. The pneumatic is not an elevated psychic. Not an improved hylic. Not a reward, not an evolution, not a status you earn. The banned texts make it brutally clear, this type was never part of the world's intended design. They are an intrusion, a rupture in the architecture, a foreign element inserted into a realm that was never meant to contain them. And once you understand how they function, you understand why every institution built on control needed this knowledge buried, burned, and wiped from record. Let me hit you with it straight. The pneumatic human doesn't awaken. They remember. Their consciousness doesn't grow upward. It drops downward like a hammer, cutting through the layers of the world because it carries something the world cannot mimic. They're not built from the substance of the physical realm. They're not shaped by its laws. They're not bound by its emotional loops or mental structures. They operate on a frequency that doesn't belong here, and the moment that frequency activates, the entire architecture of the lower system becomes unstable around them. This type carries an origin the world cannot claim. They weren't crafted for this environment. They were placed into it like a foreign code buried inside a machine. When the machine operates normally, the code stays quiet. But the moment the system glitches, that code lights up and starts rewriting everything around it. That's the pneumatic consciousness, something inserted into existence with an intention that the world itself can't override. Their awareness is not dual like the psychic. It is singular, concentrated, and sharp. It doesn't pull them in opposite directions, it cuts one direction entirely out of the equation. They are tuned to one source and one source only, and that tuning gives them an internal authority no other type possesses. They don't search for meaning. They don't crave belonging. They don't negotiate with their own mind. They move through the world with the pressure of an internal certainty that doesn't come from experience, logic, knowledge, or belief. It comes from composition. The band writings describe their consciousness as a spark from outside the constructed universe, something older, purer, sharper than the architecture that surrounds them. They respond to truth not because they learned it, but because their internal structure resonates with it like metal ringing when struck. They don't figure things out. They recognize things instantly, instinctively, and absolutely. Their perception doesn't come from effort, it comes from alignment with something higher than the world they walk in. Let's make this brutally clear. The pneumatic type doesn't behave like someone trying to understand reality. They behave like someone who already knows reality is wrong. They feel the artificiality of existence at a level that goes beyond intuition. They don't sense cracks, they see the fracture lines directly. They don't feel like outsiders because of trauma or alienation. They feel like outsiders because they are not structurally part of the system they're living in. Talk to a pneumatic and you'll notice something immediate: they're not confused. They're not divided. They're not in conflict with themselves. Their struggle is not internal, it's external. They're not battling their own mind. They're battling the world's attempt to drown out the resonance they carry. Their consciousness stands apart from the world, not above it, not against it, apart from it. Like a frequency that refuses to blend into the static. Their emotional world isn't chaotic or reactive. It's intense, focused, and driven by a sense of inner gravity. They feel things with a density that doesn't distort their clarity. Their emotions don't destabilize them. Their emotions amplify them. When they feel anger, it's not confusion. It's recognition.
Yes.
When they feel sorrow, it's not collapse. It's memory. When they feel conviction, it's not opinion. It's identity. Their emotions don't pull them into the world, they push against the world.
Yes, yes. Come on now.
Their mind is even sharper. They don't get lost in spirals. They slice through illusions with instinctive precision. Their thinking is not analytical, it's penetrating. They don't connect the dots. They see the picture before the dots even appear.
Wow.
Their insights hit in clean, brutal flashes that leave other people stunned, confused, or threatened. They don't soften their observations because their consciousness isn't shaped by social context. It's shaped by resonance with something that doesn't care about comfort, hierarchy, or consensus. This is why the pneumatic type disrupts the world simply by existing. They carry a presence that makes the lower system unstable. Not because they're rebellious. Not because they're dramatic. But because the architecture of the world cannot fully contain or predict a consciousness that isn't built from its own material. They move through existence like a foreign signal that the system keeps trying to suppress but can't erase. The ancient band texts describe them as seeds of the higher realm, embedded into the physical world without the permission of the lower creator. That single detail reveals everything. They weren't invited. They were smuggled in. They weren't manufactured by the ruler of the physical realm. They were introduced by a force outside his jurisdiction. This makes them a threat, not because of what they do, but because of what they are. Pay attention to how they react to the world. They don't adjust easily. They don't accept explanations simply because they're widely believed. They don't conform to emotional currents. They don't follow collective patterns. They react to the world as if its logic is flawed, as if something fundamental is missing, as if reality itself feels misaligned. And that misalignment isn't a psychological condition. It's a mismatch between the frequency of their consciousness and the frequency of the world around them. When the texts describe them, they emphasize something specific. The pneumatic type carries an inner structure that recognizes deception instantly. They're not immune to it, they just see through it faster than it can hold them. They recognize manipulation not because they're paranoid, but because manipulation vibrates at a frequency that their consciousness rejects. Their mind doesn't fall into illusions because illusions don't resonate with the material of their being. Their presence affects others in unpredictable ways. Some people feel drawn to them without understanding why. Some feel threatened, intimidated, exposed. Some feel energized. Some feel cornered. The pneumatic doesn't even need to speak to trigger these reactions. Their internal frequency disrupts the emotional and psychological field of every environment they enter. They don't play roles well. They don't blend seamlessly. They stand out even when they stay silent. The band writings go further. They say the pneumatic human carries a vertical intensity, something that pulls upward, not forward. They don't move through life the way others do. They don't accumulate identity through experiences. They shed identity. They strip away layers. They discard anything that doesn't resonate with their internal signal. Their life doesn't build, it collapses everything false. They are demolition tools disguised as human beings. The three types of humans exist because the universe these texts describe is not a unified creation. It is a contested territory. Two forces, different in essence, purpose, and origin, collided, and the result of that collision is the world as you know it. Not the heavens above and the hell beneath. Two realms. Two origins. Two intentions. One structure caught in the middle. And humanity became the battlefield where these forces tested their power and hid their mistakes. Here's the hard punch: the world wasn't made by the highest source. It was assembled by a secondary architect whose abilities were real but limited. And that architect, call him the demiurge, call him the craftsman of matter, needed a living engine to keep the world running. Not workers. Not worshippers. Stabilizers. That's where the first type came from. Natural components of the system. But the banned texts reveal something far more explosive. The higher realm, the one outside the world's construction, responded to this artificial creation by planting something inside it. Not an army. Not a rebellion. A seed. A fracture point. And that seed wasn't designed to fight with swords or flames or divine miracles. It was designed to undermine the system from within by carrying a substance the lower architect didn't have access to. Pure essence. That's the pneumatic type. Now here's where the psychic enters the picture, not as a mistake, but as the zone of collision. They were formed because two forces affected the same structure at once. They were engineered by the lower creator but touched by the remnant of the higher realm. They weren't meant to be soldiers. They weren't meant to be slaves. They were meant to be unstable. They are the volatile middle layer where both energies try to pull dominance. This is the cosmic conflict the banned books outline with cold clarity. Each human type plays a role in a larger strategic design. One type keeps the world steady. One type keeps the world in flux. One type threatens the world's foundation just by existing. None of this was moral. None of it was good versus evil. It was structural engineering. Let me break the tension of this for you in the way only a controversial podcaster would. The entire human divide is a power struggle disguised as creation. The lower architect wanted a stable reality. The higher realm wanted infiltration. And the psychic type became the hinge where the outcome could swing either way. That's why they're reactive. That's why they're pulled. That's why they feel like they're being torn open by invisible hands. Their entire consciousness is a pressure point in a cosmic game. The banned texts describe this design with ruthless precision. The lower architect built the world with density, cycles, patterns, predictability. Matter obeys. Energy obeys. The first human type obeys. Everything works like a locked system. But the moment the pneumatic type entered the world, obedience became impossible to fully maintain. Suddenly there were beings walking the earth that didn't vibrate in harmony with the system's frequency. They glitched the environment by merely being alive. Now imagine what that does to a world built to be closed. It creates instability. It creates fractures. It creates anomalies. Those anomalies set the psychic type on fire from the inside because they are sensitive to both sides of the equation. They feel the stability of the lower realm and the intrusion of the higher realm simultaneously. And that internal conflict isn't emotional, it's structural. Their consciousness is the field where the clash becomes visible. Think of it like this. If the world is a stage, the Hylic maintain the stage. The psychic shape the stage. And the pneumatic break the illusion of the stage entirely. The stage was built to hold weight, but the pneumatic were never meant to walk on it. Their presence stresses the beams. Their thoughts stress the air. Their awareness stresses the boundaries. And the system reacts by trying to contain them. Containment isn't punishment. It's self-defense. The world doesn't know how to handle a being built from foreign essence. It reacts by tightening its laws, intensifying its illusions, creating more noise, more distraction, more density. All to drown out the frequency the pneumatic carries. But the psychic feel that noise like pressure on the skull. They feel the tightening of the world as anxiety, confusion, rebellion, craving, collapse. They feel the clash directly, and the more intense it becomes, the more reactive their consciousness gets. Let me talk directly to you the way a controversial host would on a live stream, staring dead into the camera. The three types of humans exist because two realms are fighting over the blueprint of reality, and humanity is the medium where that fight becomes experience. You don't see the conflict in the sky. You feel it inside people. The texts didn't describe a war of angels or demons. They described a war of architecture. They break it down like this: the lower realm built bodies. The higher realm inserted sparks. The collision produced instability. Instability produced transformation. Transformation threatened the lower architect. The threat triggered suppression. Suppression triggered awareness. Awareness triggered conflict. Conflict intensified the difference between the three human types. Now we push it deeper. The banned texts describe something most people will never hear unless they dig into material that mainstream religion destroyed. They say the lower architect didn't understand the true nature of the essence the pneumatic carried. He saw them as flawed creations. Deviance. Mistakes. He misread their divergence as disobedience. He didn't realize they weren't rebelling, he simply didn't design them. And that lack of design made him lose control. This is the darkest part. The lower architect built laws to bind the Hylic. He built illusions to distract the psychic. But for the pneumatic, nothing worked. Their consciousness wasn't designed here. They weren't made to fit. Every attempt to contain them only produced more cracks. And every crack destabilized the entire world's equilibrium. That's why the psychic became volatile. They feel the pressure of the world trying to hold itself together around a type of being it cannot fully contain. This is the cosmic tension the banned texts reveal. Humanity wasn't a peaceful creation. It was a structural compromise. The three human types are not philosophical categories. They're outcomes of a war disguised as creation. A war no human remembers consciously, but every human carries in their architecture. You want the raw version? The forbidden texts make it explicit. The lower architect wanted order. The higher realm wanted retrieval. And the psychic type became the terrain where this conflict played out. They are the battleground where identity shifts, where consciousness fractures, where resonance leaks through the seams of the world. The Hylic stabilize the world. The psychic destabilize it. The pneumatic threaten to dissolve it. The forbidden texts say the three types of humans weren't created to coexist peacefully. They were created as different responses to the architecture of the world itself. The Hylic keep the world intact. The Psychic pull the world into instability. The Pneumatic break the illusion entirely. And when you put those three designs into one system, the result is inevitable: pressure, tension, erosion, and eventually, rupture. The ancient authorities knew this. They didn't fear moral rebellion, they feared structural collapse. Because once someone understands what type they are, the spell loses power. The texts describe a moment, not in time but in structure, when the system begins to reveal its seams. Each human type responds differently. But the most important part is not their behavior, it's the purpose behind their categorization. The three types exist because the world was built to be a sealed loop. A closed design. A self-contained reality. When the Pneumatic entered this closed design, the loop cracked. When the Psychic felt that crack, they began destabilizing the balance.
Wow.
When the Hylic continued following the system, the
Disorganized,
pressure between
disorganized.
the layers intensified. That pressure is the entire secret of Baggy and Six. Let's break it in the raw, direct way a controversial podcaster would do it live, staring at the camera with no apology. The three human types reveal what the world is made of, how it holds itself together, and where the fracture leads. Not heaven. Not destruction. A break in the architecture itself. The texts describe something most people never hear because no institution would ever allow this information to survive. Every consciousness in the world is mapped to one of these three structures because the world itself is divided. Not vertically. Horizontally. A layered field with different densities of existence. The Hylic move through the thickest layer. The Psychic move between layers. The Pneumatic move against the layers entirely. Now listen carefully, because this is where the forbidden knowledge stops being metaphor and becomes technical. The lower architect designed the dense layer to be rigid, unchanging, predictable. The Hylic fit perfectly into that rigidity. Their structure blends into it. They stabilize it. The Psychic don't stabilize anything. Their structure vibrates between densities. They cause turbulence.
Shaking.
Pressure.
A lot of shaking going on.
Distortion. They are the human equivalent of a frequency leak. And the Pneumatic, the ones carrying the substance the world wasn't built to hold, don't fit into any layer. Their presence weakens the boundaries of the world. They don't try to escape. Their structure naturally resists confinement. The banned texts use a phrase that cuts straight to the core. The Pneumatic dissolve the architecture by being within it. Not by rebelling. Not by fighting. By existing. This is what Baggy and Six is about, the revelation that the world cannot permanently contain the three types together. The structure is already strained. The division of humanity is not just a description, it's the blueprint of the world's own instability. The texts describe the final state of the architecture with a brutality that explains why this knowledge had to be buried. When the Hylic continue to reinforce the world, they add weight. When the Psychic continue to destabilize the world, they create cracks. When the Pneumatic continue to move through the world, they widen those cracks. And eventually, the world reaches a point where its structure can no longer maintain the illusion of unity. That moment isn't a prophecy.
It's fat.
It's a structural inevitability. The forbidden texts describe the three types converging, not physically, but energetically. The Hylic anchor the world at maximum density. The Psychic reach peak instability. And the Pneumatic exert pressure the system can no longer regulate. At that point, the architecture does what any closed system does when internal pressure exceeds its design: it fractures.
That's heavy. That's some really good stuff.
This
When you really look at
game-
this, I'll get this off right now.
You're not ready
We're
for
almost
it.
done. It was long. I thought it was 23 minutes. But
Not with fire.
But we're at 2 minutes.
Not with war.
Done with
With exposure,
Then we'll close.
the illusion fails.
Yeah.
The boundaries fail.
It's obvious the illusion.
The layers
of
cannot hold
many
each other
of us.
anymore.
This makes a lot.
The banned
of
teachings
design
describe it with
sense.
imagery that
It's
sounds
called
symbolic,
system.
but it's not.
Matrix.
They say the world turns inside out, meaning the inner architecture becomes visible, the outer facade collapses, and everything built on illusion is forced into transparency. But here's the part most people never hear: the three types don't end in the same place. because they were never built for the same purpose. The Hylic remain in the density they belong to. Their structure is tied to the physical layer. The psychic break along their internal fault line. Their direction depends on which resonance finally dominates, stability or disruption. And the pneumatic don't transition. They return to the structure they came from, because the world cannot anchor them after its architecture fractures.
Wow.
They were always inside the system temporarily, like a foreign material that weakens the container from within. The forbidden texts describe this moment as the disclosure, not judgment, not redemption, not apocalypse. Disclosure, when the system loses the ability to hide what it is and what it contains. That is the core of Baggy and Six. The three human types don't just reveal different identities. They reveal different trajectories, different origins, and different final states. The ancient authorities weren't scared of rebellion. They were scared of exposure. Because once humanity knows its true categorization, the world stops functioning as a closed system. The illusion of sameness collapses. The architecture becomes visible. The blueprint becomes obvious. And the moment the blueprint becomes obvious, the system loses the one thing it depends on, invisibility. That is why the texts were banned. That is why the teachings vanished. Not because they were dangerous to belief, but because they were dangerous to structure. Thank you for watching this video all the way to the end.
Interesting. If I do say so myself, I'll get out of this sharing. Very interesting. I had to play this when I seen this the other day because it made fully sense to me in the struggle of what we see in this reality with the three different people and the observation of the what they are. Seeing that even the Hylics really aren't necessarily I'm going to get you and I'm evil and then it was more they're structured in their frequency just to create stability for the system. And that's what they are. That's what the frequencies is. And the Hylics are the ones in between kind of going, like, I see it, want more, but I still want this. And they're caught between the pull and pull, the pressure, right? And then, of course, the pneumatics know whence they're from, know what they are, and know why they're here. We're a cog in the wheel for those who are there. We're the cog in the system's wheel to turn that mother out. And it needs to be done because we're hence not from here. This is very good. Why I wanted to put this together is to get an observation of now. Observation of everything that's happening now. Totally. And then being able to see what exactly is happening in the now, right? For us and what's going on. I mean, it's true, it's factual, and that we can see it and get a good understanding with all that's being said to receive truth and know that the purpose that we're here, if you're that which you are. I see the middle group can choose in a way completely and go the other side, or they can easily just fall back down into that which they were. Psychics, which is not what we call psychics. Now, it has nothing to do with having psychic abilities. They're caught between both worlds. The bottom is the foundation of this world, the God of this world, right? Its foundation. Those were the builders, and then the pneumatics who came from another place, and we got punctured into here to put a cog in the wheel of this system that doesn't really work and is not the higher state of being. So awesome. Put this with the last video and then the collaboration of how this works. We'll be back with some more great videos real soon. D-Boy, West Coast Uncensored, appreciate you, love you. Please give to help us give. I got to go take this down and see what I can do with it in getting something for an external, maybe even a new external camera. So please give for the work that I put in, the time as I do put in time, anybody that appreciates that can give. I'm sure you will be blessed by your giving. You guys have a great, great day. And keep the love train going. Know you're here for, and you got a purpose. You got a purpose. Just being you. If you're definitely be you, and if you're in the state of being you as a pneumatic, just being you can be the difference. Have a great day.